Hi, Lee here. So if you remember last video, I finished off the neck, put all the frets in. It's looking really good. The next step is to start working on the body. So for that, I've got a big piece of ash and I've got some sycamore for a top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to cut the ash. It's going to be a two-piece body, so I'll glue the two halves together and then I'm going to glue the sycamore on top. But what I'm thinking about is I'm thinking about doing some weight relief, so I might do a semi-hollow design on the body. But let's take a closer look so you can have a look what I'm thinking. As you can see, I've already drawn the line for the size of a Telecaster body. I'm going to do a Telecaster single cut style guitar. So I need to cut this into two pieces and glue them side by side. For the top, hopefully you can see this, but I've got some matched sycamore. It needs a bit more prep and it needs a lot of sanding, but what I'm hoping is I will put this on top and polish it. I was thinking about dyeing it, but I've changed my mind with the dye. I think I'm just going to either use wax or oil. I've practiced sanding some of this sycamore and it comes up to a really nice shine, so I don't want to ruin that shine. I really like it. So first of all, let's get on the bandsaw and we'll cut the ash into two halves and then we'll glue those two halves together. This piece of wood is way too big for my bandsaw, so I've got a handheld saw. Hopefully this will go through it okay because this is a thick piece of wood. But let's see if we can get this done now. So before I glue these together, so all I'm going to do is just glue these on top of each other. Let's have a look at the pattern. I think like that. They should be very straight and level already because obviously they were planed from the factory that I got them from. But I'm just going to double check with the sander and maybe a hand plane just to make sure they're perfect, and then I'll get the glue and we'll glue them together. So that looks good. I'll leave that overnight and then we'll cut the body shape out tomorrow. So as you can see, this is a big block of wood and I think it's going to be way too heavy, especially with the extra top on it as well. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some weight relief into this body, and if you take a look at the top, I've already drawn out a template of a guitar and an F-hole as well. So I just downloaded a template of an F-hole. So what I might do is I might hollow out some of the top of the guitar at least so the weight stays at the bottom, just for some weight relief, and I'll make it like a semi-hollow design and put an F-hole into it. The reason I quite like that idea is as I look a bit closer at this sycamore top, you can see there's some blemishes in there that I would otherwise need to fill with some filler. But that F-hole, if I put it in that position, pretty much perfectly covers some of the blemishes, so I can actually get rid of those by cutting the hole into the sycamore. As you can see, I've already drawn out the bridge section, the pickups, the controls, just to give me a rough idea of the Telecaster shape. I've also already measured up my neck roughly to get to the 25.5 inch scale length, which I've drawn a line for on there, and I've also drawn the best place to get a matching pattern on my sycamore top when I've stuck it on there. So with that done, what I want to do is I want to start cutting the ash out. So I'll draw the same template on the ash, and I'll try and work out how I'm going to cut these together. Obviously what I don't want to do is, because I still need to cut the weight relief into the ash, I don't want to glue this on top yet until that's been done. So I'm just going to work out how I can do that properly. So what I've decided to do is actually cut the top out first, and that will be my template for the body, so I can get it matched up. So let's get on and cut the two halves of this out and get my rough Telecaster shape, and I'll use that as a template. And then I can cut the body. I can do the hollowing out of the body, and then I can glue this on top. And then I'll route the pickup holes into it. So let's get on and cut this out. So this fits perfectly. I've actually left it slightly oversized because what I've decided is, since it's near Christmas, I'm going to buy myself a bobbin sander, or sometimes called a spindle sander. So that's where the sander is in a bobbin vertically, and it moves up and down. The reason I want to do that is, once I've drawn the template and this is the ash is finally cut out, and they're glued together, I want to be able to go round on the bobbin sander to make sure all of this is perfectly in line and matched. It's going to be a lot easier than trying to do it by hand. So I treat myself to a new sander for Christmas. But let's get on and draw around this. I also have to work out where the weight relief goes before I glue this on. So obviously the weight relief is going to go somewhere in the top part of the guitar, because that's where the sound hole is going to be, the F hole. So let's draw around this and we'll start to work out where I can route into the body. Okay, so what I've found is this slab of wood is way too thick with the top on as well. So I am going to try and curve and shape it to the body, but before I do that, I'm actually going to get my electric planer, and I'm going to take off half a centimetre, so 5mm, because this really needs to be thinned down a bit. This is a big heavy lump of wood and it's way too thick with the top on as well. So let's get the hand planer and try and make it a bit thinner and get it ready. So now this is cut out, I'm just trying to decide. As you can see, I drew where I may want to put some holes into it, but I keep thinking about it and I think I'm not going to bother with the sound holes. I'm just going to leave this because I like this wood and I don't want lots of patterns and things to take away from that. So what I've done is I'm still going to hollow out some chambers in there just for weight relief, but I'm not going to make any sound holes. So it shouldn't make a difference to the sound because most of the wood and where the bridge is and the neck is all still solid. So it shouldn't affect anything, but I just need to get rid of some of the weight. So I've drawn out a couple of places where I'm going to hollow out, and this section for the controls, that's going to be all the way through. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start hollowing out. Instead of just using a router to do it all, I'm actually going to try and use one of these drill pieces just to take most of it out, and then I'll smooth it out with the router afterwards. So let's get started with that. So that's pretty good. I've put some weight relief in. I've put the control all the way through for the controls. Obviously what I'm going to do is I'm not going to use the metal plate on the front of the Sycamore top, I'm actually just going to put the knobs and the switch straight through the top. So that's why I can just go all the way through this. On the back, I'm just going to make myself a plate to fit over the back of the controls. The weight relief is pretty good. It is actually, even though it doesn't look a lot, it's actually a lot lighter than it was, so I'm happy with that. Remember my plan, I was thinking about putting some sound holes in, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't want to ruin this top, so I'm going to not bother with the sound holes. I'm just going to leave those chambers just for weight relief. So the next thing I was thinking of doing is putting some sort of contoured edges on there, just so it fits a bit snug, a bit more snug to your body when you're playing. I don't know about the bottom one, but I'm definitely going to put like a small section there, just so it fits a bit closer. So I'm going to get the bandsaw out. I'm going to get the bench sander, and I'm going to start wearing away at that. And we'll see where we go. This is looking good so far. The only issue I'm starting to think about is obviously the top needs to have the pickups cut out already, so you can remove them. I can't glue or put the pickups underneath the top, so to speak, so you want to be able to replace the pickups. So what I'm thinking is, do I cut some holes into the body before I glue the top on? And then I think it might be easier to then route out the pickup holes in the top, because I'll only be routing the 5mm that the top is, rather than having to route all the thick wood underneath. So what I'm thinking is, do I create some holes here now before I glue the top on, or do I just glue the top on and then cut the right shape hole but be as careful as possible? Okay, so as you can see, I decided to route out some slots for the pickups rather than going through the top. So I can be a lot more accurate on the top, so I'm taking away less material. Like I say, the top's only 5mm, so I might even be able to route that out with the Dremel tool, which is a lot more accurate than my big router. All I've done is I've gone forwards, but I've left enough gap behind, because obviously I need, from the 12th fret, I need 12.75 inches to make the scale length, but I still need to make sure I leave enough room so the bridge is screwed into the main body through the top. I'm also going to do a string through the body design, rather than the strings attaching to the back of the bridge. I'm going to put them through the body, so I bought some ferrules for the back. So I've got a little bit of room to play with going this way to get to the 12.75 inches I'm going to need. So I haven't cut the holes too big, but I've cut them big enough that I can move it back and forth slightly when I finally do the measurements on the top and do the final routing. So as you can see here, that's in the centre, so roughly 12.75. The bridge will be around there. So there's still plenty of material. I can still drill the holes to mount the bridge directly into the body through the top, and I can get the strings for the strings to go through the body as well. So I'm happy with that. I also routed just some slots to for the cables to run through into the control area. So we're getting really near now where I'm going to glue the top on. So I'm just going to put the top on and do some final measurements, and then I'll glue that on. So finally, I think I've got to the point where I'm going to glue the top onto the body. So everything looks pretty good. As you've seen already, I've cut the weight relief from the body, I've cut the channels, I've cut some sockets so that when I route the pickup slots on the top, it's going to be a lot easier because there's less material to go through. So I think I'm ready now to glue the top on. So what I'm thinking of doing is just gluing one half on to start with and letting it dry. Because what I want to do is, when I clamp the second half on to glue it, I want to be able to put a clamp on the other side and pull the two halves of the top together really tight, so I get as small a gap as possible on the join. Because obviously, even though this is as straight as I can get it, it's not ever going to be perfectly straight. So I'm going to glue one half first, let it dry so it's solid, and then when I glue the second half, I'm going to clamp across it to pull the second half into the first half to make it as tight as possible so that join hopefully disappears. So let's do that now. So the body is now pretty much cut to shape with the top glued on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this video here, but next video it will be going through cutting out or routing the slot for the neck, and of course the pickups, and starting to sand and do the final finish on the body. But for now I'm really happy with this, so we'll see you next video.